I think
Right.
in every business, what matters more, walk the talk. That's what I learned everywhere. If you promise something, then do it. If you're not sure, don't promise. Be honest, and honesty pays as well. And this is something I learned back at JP Morgan, because even in there, you can deal with situations, with client situations, which you haven't seen before. Don't make it up. If you don't know what the client is asking, say, hey, let me deal with that and find the right person, or let me go and find the right answer for you. Because what people hate the most, then you promise them something and then you don't deliver.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this new episode of the Fundraising Insiders podcast. Today we are with Tanya. Tanya, can you please tell me how I pronounce your last name? Is it
Absolutely. Yeah, in English, it's going to be Montmean.
Tanya actually speaks a lot of languages. We had a first call where we discovered that we were speaking all of these languages. And not only you speak a lot of languages, but you speak a lot of professional languages, I will say. You have been through a career journey, and we will probably start with your long experience with JP Morgan. But from there, it has been an even more interesting one, leading towards the early stage venture, maybe VC investment. And this is exactly what we're going to explore today. The journey you've been taking since the JP days and your learnings and where you're going. And we're all dying to hear where you're going. What are those learnings? So Tanya, please introduce yourself, where you're from, who are you, what do you do, and what led you to where you are today.
Thank you, Thibaut. Very flattered to be here on the podcast. My name is Tanya Montmean. I'm originally from Europe, but it's a good question where I'm from, because I'm mixed German, French, and Russian. I was born in Germany, in Berlin, and then I lived across Germany, France, and Austria as a kid. Then I studied in France and in Italy, and I started my career at JP Morgan in London, where I spent almost 7 years, and then I moved to New York. Then I lived in Asia and in several places in the US. So I guess I'm a real global citizen. That's at least how I see myself. I do indeed speak 6 languages, 3 already my kind of mother tongues, and 3 other acquired by just living in different countries and studying and working there. I started in JP Morgan. I was in investment banking, pretty classic career, where you start as an analyst and then you grow towards the VP level, where I actually left. And my times at GP, I started in M&A. Then at my time, the program was rotational. So I had to rotate to another team. I did advisory and I did leverage finance. And I think out of 3 rotations, I really enjoyed leverage finance, which is where I decided to pursue later. So I ended up doing a lot of deals in infrastructure space. And being in London, I was covering the entire Europe. So I had a chance to work with clients across the entire Europe, and also to do a couple of cross-border deals. This is how I actually end up knowing US team, which later asked me to move to New York. And for sure, someone working in investment bank, an American investment bank, opportunity to go to US to work from the headquarters was very exciting. So here I was. I moved to New York during pandemic. It was not an easy time, but it was actually quite fascinating. It was very, very busy for financing side, because government was pushing a lot of funding. All issuers were reissuing. When I finally moved to New York, I realized that all colleagues I worked with, they left because they were completely burned out. So it was an interesting time. I learned a ton, but it was also quite challenging personally, because you live for clients, you live for deals which you love, but as a person, you realize at some point that you also want to have life outside of JP Morgan, outside of the office. And this is what led me to my next step, which was quite unexpected. I'm coming from entrepreneurship family. My dad was entrepreneur, and I always swore that I would never be entrepreneur. Looking at him working hard, seeing all these clients, taking care of his employees. He started it then I was there like at high school, and we were going to his office on the weekend to see dad because he was always busy. So I told myself, no way, I will be working for someone, for I will be entrepreneur. But here I was, friend of mine actually just graduated from Columbia Business School with an MBA, and he had an idea of a startup, and he was also an investment banker. And he asked me if I wanted to join, and I jumped on opportunities because it felt like I already explored a lot of things in investment banking, and I stayed there almost 10 years. It was time to do something else with my life. I didn't want to spend my entire life in one company and seeing only one thing, even though, as I said, I very much enjoyed what I've been doing. So I jumped on this venture without thinking that much. This is how I take decisions usually. I say yes to things first, and then I realize what I said yes to. That was exactly my entrepreneurial experience with Hawkish Capital, which at the time was called Climate Kick. It was a green fintech on a blockchain. We were structuring deals which in the sustainability space. This is what we were building initially from Hong Kong. The reason we went to Hong Kong were following. First of all, Asia and Hong Kong government were very into everything Web3 related, way ahead of Europe and US at the time. And also we get a couple of grants from the government, and my co-founder worked in a bank in Hong Kong. So he had some connections. So this is where we started. For me, it was absolutely fascinating. I never been to Hong Kong before, but I fell in love with the city the moment I stepped out of the airport. The energy of this place is insane. I keep a particular place in my heart for Hong Kong. It's a bustling city. People are very friendly. It's also expat community, and it's very, very easy to integrate there, to make new connections, be it business, be it personal. We also started to build our business, and we were targeting to be international. Investors usually like investing in the geography they know well, and they want to have their investment close to where they are. So we started to
It's a
build.
way for them to de-risk their investment. You invest in what you know, you invest in what you can see. It's a way of
Absolutely.
reducing the risk, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's exactly is because there is already a lot of risk in every investment outside of that.
Sure.
So they want to find some similarities. And then it also comes to the legal structure, because when you invest, you have to think about what happens if things go wrong. And do you understand the jurisdiction you are dealing with? Do you know how investor friendly it is? Because as we know, Anglo-Saxon countries are way more investor friendly. And then there is
Of
angle
course.
if you're local or not. There is a lot of legal things. And for me, it was like an MBA in entrepreneurship, because once you work in a company like JP Morgan, you have resources. You always have people who tell you what to do, where to go to look for. Because if you have a legal advice, if you need a legal advice, you know you have a very good legal team. If you know expert in a certain field, you know where to search. While when you're entrepreneur, you have to create and find it out by yourself, and your resources are limited.
Yep.
So you have to be very creative. So I guess to answer your question, Thibaut, what my key takeaway from this journey was that you have to be ready to deal with everything and deal with things very quickly,
Okay.
and understand the complex environments you getting yourself into and situations, because you may think one thing when you have a project in mind, but once you go to the ground, is reality shows you completely different things. And then it comes to the founder's character, how quickly you can adapt and how good you are under pressure. I think my career at JP Morgan trained me very well to deal with very stressful situation, to deal well with a stressful situation. So for me, every challenge was like, okay, give it to me. Let me find it out. But I saw many
see, yeah.
people who come from maybe different background and have maybe also different personalities from mine. They would find themselves pretty overwhelmed with all these inbounds when you don't know how to deal with, when there is no one to tell you, because you
Of
have to
course.
find, especially when you start, you have to find your way, you have to find people to work with, and then you will do mistakes.
It's an awful lot of finance, but it's not the same amount of finance every time. At JP, we're talking about structuring deals in the billions. And when you get to Hawkish, we're talking smaller projects. So you're already scaling down in size. And we're talking about, well, there's blockchain investment, but you also talk about going through an accelerator program. You've done some grant applications. We're talking about a different scale. And different scale move at different speeds. So what was the key difference in, you would say, the JP Morgan scale of deals versus this smaller scale? Maybe is it more active? Is it more flexible? Or what was the big difference with Hawkish versus JP? I mean, apart from the fact that one, you're one of many in a massive structure like JP, whereas in Hawkish, you come in, we have this founder profile, so it's very different. But the type of projects you're engaged with, the types of funding that you face, it has different dynamics. Can you tell us a bit more about this? Because this will lead to your other roles and to the future, which is this VC startup ecosystem. How do we channel from the 20 billion type deals to the smaller scale?
To be honest, for me, and thank you so much for a great question. To be honest, for me, the main difficulty was not having a big name behind me, because I'm same Tanya, but Tanya with a JP Morgan name on that, seen slightly different from Tanya with a Hawkish capital who no one knows. And even your connections who knows you very well, they understand what you are much riskier. To be fair, when you go after clients and JP Morgan, you don't even need to go after clients because clients come after you.
They come to you. Yeah.
So you have this JP Morgan name and the client doesn't care. Like, so far, I have a JP Morgan tag. They trust I already been pre-selected and I'm competent. While when I am doing it on my own, I need to prove myself, and prove myself it's much harder because people say, okay, we know you work there, but now you're doing that. Are you up for this? And then there is much more risk, and not everyone will be convinced. And in terms of complexity, I would say smaller deals or bigger deals have same amount of complexity and same amount of actually diligence and everything, because dealing with a client, you need to go through certain process. There's a standard diligence process, be it 1 million
Right.
project or 1 billion project. That's why banks are very smart in this sense. They don't want to deal with a smaller one because they require as much work, but they are not as remunerative
And they
in
don't make as
terms of
much.
how much money you can make. Our whole thesis was actually based on we will cover this niche where banks don't go to 100 million and below ticket size of the project, because banks will not deal with them. It's too small for the bank in terms of fee. So I would say it's harder than working for a big bank, because at least when you work at a big deal, you have like teams for everything, and there is a people around you helping you with the diligence process. While when you do it by yourself, lots of diligence you cannot outsource anymore. You have to do it by yourself, and sometimes you don't have expertise. I had to get up to speed on legal things, and I'm not legal by background. Yes, I work with lawyers closely, but there is technicalities in the projects, and I didn't get it always right. We had issues where we structured the deal, and then we realized that it was not a deal, but the contract with the client was not as robust. And then if the client doesn't want to pay or do something, we have less recourse. So basically, I
Do you
think
feel?
to answer, yeah.
Yeah, please finish this.
No, basically, it's just, I think, more hustle and more caskets what you need to wear. And there is a more risk because you will be wearing caskets you will be dealing with things you never dealt before. And first time will be not perfect, but this is entrepreneurship.
I guess this is where this can be conjugated with what you said before about the credibility. Not only you're looking for credibility in a domain where you're already an expert, but because you don't have the name, you're not as trusted anymore. But when it comes to getting credibility in a place where you're not an expert or you're just freshly learning to become one, and you don't have the name, you have this like sort of double trouble. So how did you deal with building that credibility from zero? Is it a matter of just results? Do you have mentors or do you have partners that are here to lend you the name or to give you that validation as a third party? How did you deal with this?
I think it's combination of both. First of all, I think
Right.
in every business, what matters more, walk the talk. That's what I learned everywhere. If you promise something, then do it. If you're not sure, don't promise. Be honest, and honesty pays as well. And this is something I learned back at JP Morgan, because even in there, you can deal with situations, with client situation, which you haven't seen before. Don't make it up. If you don't know what the client is asking, say, hey, let me deal with that and find the right person, or let me go and find the right answer for you. Because what people hate the most, then you promise them something and then you don't deliver. So
Right.
credibility, for sure, it's not something you build overnight. It comes down also to the way you carry yourself. I think credibility is built on the two parts. It's a storytelling, and comes to also fundraising. When you fundraise the first time as a startup, there are two things which matter, in my view. One is storytelling, how good you are in explaining what brought you where you are right now, why you're doing
Okay.
what you're doing, and what benefit it can give to anyone else working with you or dealing with you or using your product. And then the other part is for sure results and competencies. I can be a great storyteller, but then if people start digging into technicals and details and I know nothing, if I don't understand my industry, if I haven't done the research and homework, my credibility goes back, right? So I think these two pillars needs to be persistent. And then the third pillar is persistency, showing up and then being okay with certain people not trusting you. That's normal. Go after someone else. To some degree, all this entrepreneurship, client acquisition, first time new, to me, it's a bit like a dating. You have to meet a lot of people, do your best.
True.
And then some people, you will say, I don't want to work with you as well. What I learned as well when I just started my entrepreneurship journey, when I started to have clients and everything, you want to work with everyone because you have no one. And then suddenly someone wants to work and you say yes to everything. But you need to also listen to your gut. And sometimes, like this person will be pain in my butt. And actually he or she will be much more trouble than the revenues in the end. And with
And
time,
it's
you
not worth
start.
it.
Yes, you need to listen to that and you need to know. And at the beginning, you cannot say no, but once you already build it a bit, better have less clients, but the good clients, the one you really enjoy working with, than
Right.
having tons of clients and there is no feed, because there's also my style. Maybe it's not for everyone, right? Like right now, what I'm doing at StartLink Venture, I'm consider myself as a fundraising coach, which is much more than just like sending the decks and talking to investors, because it includes go-to-market strategy, customer acquisition, marketing, many, many things. And if the client is not listening to my opinion, then it's very hard to work with him or her. And then it's
And
not gonna.
you're wasting their time as much as they're wasting your time. So
Absolutely, because maybe
the
it's just
transparency
my
comes in
way
as well.
of explaining, or maybe my ideas is not working for them. And that's fine. There is a lot of people doing the same job I do in the market. And then you just need to find your person.
The good
You need
match.
to try. You need to understand if this person resonates with you or not, if his or her approach works for you, because people work also differently. And that happens in a big organization as well. We were talking before how you end up on certain deals being asked by certain seniors to work because they also take you because your style matches theirs. You kind of, with some people, it's much easier to work. I just say something and you get it because we work in the same way. And the other people will be much harder because we're very different. I'm very high pace, for example. For me, working with someone who is very meticulous and slow is pain, because all my decisions I take, like I look at the big picture. I don't dig
With
into
the gut.
details. I take decisions with the gut and I look at the big picture and then I narrow down. So for me, someone who digs into details and buries and will ask me every tiny piece, it's not how I take a decision. Who will say pros and cons and tables? That's not working for me. And I think it's fine.
I
Everyone
guess
is different.
it goes back to what you were saying, that it's a bit like dating. You need to find the right person. It doesn't happen always on the first try, but it's about the communication. Now let me throw maybe a little spanner in the wheels. You're saying that to get confidence, to get trust, it's about the result and, well, people knowing what you do. So having to do the research. We're talking about this due diligence phase and making sure that you walk the talk, that you don't promise something or you don't fake it till you make it. And when you say something, you act upon it and you know what you're talking about. And this is a logical explanation. Anyone you ask probably has some form of definition of trust that, or some form of path to get trust that resembles this. Then why is it that, let's take a similar field, in the investment field, sometimes you have projects that come either out of nowhere or not out of nowhere and get a lot of trust, get a lot of investment, and then we realize that this work has not been done and the trust was based on nothing, or maybe it was based on FOMO. Recently, there's been the whole scandal of was it a Bill Gates' daughter that raised I don't know how many millions on the product, and then when digging into the whole deal, they realized that there was nothing, there was no traction. Traction was promised, was nothing. So how is it that some people can get trust in maybe a less ethical way and yet succeed to do it? Is that, do you call this cheating, or is every path a good path to get to trust? Like, does the end justify the means when you want to get someone's trust?
Good question, Thibaut. I think you should differentiate between two things. Am I misleading people intentionally, or I am delusional myself? Because if
Okay.
it's the first, for sure, then it's unethical. And if I know that I have nothing and I ask money for the air, then it should be banned. It's unethical, but we cannot stop it. Nowadays, with a more and more regulation, it becomes harder and harder to do that. This is where regulation comes from. But at the same time, it's harder also to do something innovative or something new and something quick, because there is a lot of regulation and you bump into all these rules, and sometimes you realize it suffocates the innovation. On the other hand,
Especially in Europe.
sometimes people are also just delusional. I'm working with a lot of founders, and if I'm very frank, I think 80% of the founders are delusional about their idea and about their capacity to deliver an idea. How many times I hear someone comes to me and say, "Hey, I have this very innovative idea," and they don't even do market research, knowing that someone already built that from scratch and it's already working and it's nothing innovative, but they think it's just an idea and enough. So I think not everyone doing, like, many people get into entrepreneurship randomly because they just burn out in their high caliber work. Like in the Silicon Valley, you see a lot of tech entrepreneurs who just like been working for Google, for Meta. They're tired of stress. They're tired of their difficult boss. They quit and they say, "Hey, now I should build something because everyone is building here," right? There's a bit of a FOMO, but they don't have an idea. They don't have a proper idea. They throw something and then they start working. And then if they are very good if they're very persuasive, then people may be delusional and may follow them. And sometimes it's also finding the timing and right way. I don't think there is one answer, unfortunately, to that. It's a combination of many things. One, and we're talking not about intentional misleading the investors, but about having a project which after you realize will not work. Because I think many people just authentically think their idea is unique, but they have nothing unique about that, right? And then it's like, again, coming to people interaction. Everyone thinks they are funny and interesting and good conversationalists, but are they? Most of them not. So the same with entrepreneurship. And sometimes it's just like, for example, if you look AI related 5 years ago, everyone knew AI is coming and everyone wanted to be in that. And people started to invest anything they heard AI because of the FOMO, and how much money was lost on this project because this project never went anywhere because founders were just throwing AI to get funding. And then they were not following through. Their idea was not well developed. They didn't even have proper idea. They just raised something and like just
But
hanged out there and wasted everyone's time and money. And
at
now
this point, you say they waste everyone's time and money, but did they waste the people's money, or did people waste their own money by believing this? Like it.
well, I
I'm not trying to do the blame game, but if I'm delusional and I manage to convince you, not in an unethical way, I'm just delusional about what I do, and you trust me, but you don't do your work of due diligence to see if I'm delusional, whose fault is it? Maybe it's you who were delusional, not me. Is there a way that you could advise beyond founders, maybe investors, on how to resist this delusion, how to not be trapped by this?
I think people need to think more by their own brain and not listen to what others think, because you see it a lot in finance and even on the Wall Street. Everyone looking for lead investor. If JP Morgan is in there, if BlackRock is leading, people just put money. They don't trust themselves. They trust others more. And sometimes you can trust yourself and you can be wrong as well. I can uniquely believe in a project and I invested as an angel in some projects which did not go through. Sometimes I think it's a combination of many things, and it's also experience, right? That's why when we talk about why investors like experienced entrepreneurs, because sometimes you need to fail to realize what's not working. And I consider myself as a failed entrepreneur at the beginning because my first venture, Hawkish Capital, didn't end up as I planned. We disagreed with my co-founder how to run it, and I had to step out. I learned a lot. And I took this learning. I think what you say, Tibor, it's a real problem, but I don't know how to go about that because there would be always people just like doing their diligence, And in any early stage project, you have very limited information, right? When you look at investing into developed companies like Google or Apple, you have a track record. You have something to look at.
There's data to
And its performance, right? When you invest into something new, who knows? Who knows if it's going to be like, if you think about Elon Musk SpaceX, many people were laughing when he started. No one believed in that. And look, then it was the biggest IPO ever on the Wall Street. So there is a mixture. On one hand, entrepreneurs needs to be these crazy people who see things visionary, who see things which no one sees. But on the other hand, there is also risk that it's just a delusion. And I think this is very well summarized in the ratio of success to failure in the venture world. If you look at venture firms, when they invest, 80% of their investment, even for successful fund, will be a failure. You have to invest, exactly. You have to invest in failures a bit. You have to invest in the entrepreneurship, in these ideas searching. But of course, there should be some level of diligence. And then that's why people try to do syndicates, try to talk to others. But sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad because if you're part of syndicate and you listen to certain voices, you may just do what they say because you say like, exactly, you may feel like, oh, this deal is not really good, but this very powerful investor says it's a great deal. I'll follow him or her because they have experience. So you need to also know how much experience you have. When you have no experience in anything, then for sure, listen to expert. Once you start, and you need to also do try and error. I think it's true for everything. When you start riding a bike, it's try and error. You need to fall a couple of times and then maybe do some stupid thing before you learn how to do it. The same for everything. When you start learning swimming, you don't know how to swim. When you start entrepreneurship is the same. You need to practice. And the more you do, the better you become. So investment, especially in the venture, because of a higher risk profile of all these companies, takes long time. What I mean by that, not only in terms of investment cycle, but also in terms of you building this expertise.
learning.
Right now, I am better in spotting good founders versus bad founder. When I started, I kind of felt it, but I was not sure. I was always, let me try. Maybe I'm wrong. And then you try and you see the person doesn't have what it takes. So I think it's a combination, but there would be always failures. Otherwise, it's not going to be interesting.
So speaking of what you're doing, I think it's about time we talk about StartLink Venture, which is what takes the most of your time. You described it earlier as fundraising coaching. It's a lot more than this. You do warm introductions. You connect companies or founders with angels, with investors. You sit down to not only look at what they've got today, but what they can develop to be a better company and be investment ready. Let's talk a little bit about this. If you have to talk about StartLink, what is it? Why did you do it? I think we started answering this in the start of our conversation, is to clear up some of those questions. And what have you learned through doing StartLink, which has been nearly 2 years now? What are the key learnings of StartLink? Where did you start? What did you learn doing it? And you also did some angel investment around this.
Absolutely.
What did you learn?
Well, first of all, how I did start. When at some point, Hawkish Capital, we started to disagree with my co-founder how to run it. I decided that because initial idea was his and he was CEO, I decided that it's not worth it fighting anymore for the things and that I want to step out and take my learning experience with me and starting something by myself. That time I said, I don't want a co-founder anymore because I know there's a lot of debates and Y Combinator, for example, doesn't accept startups with only solo founders. I have my own view. I told myself, I feel like we spend so much time in just agreeing on stupid things. I want to put this energy into something else. I don't want to put my energy in co-founders. I want to put this time into building. If I fail, and I was very comfortable to fail. I am maybe slightly differently built from many people. I would rather fail spectacularly, but on my own decisions than follow someone else. So I was not afraid to do it on myself. So after this chapter in Hong Kong, I moved to Silicon Valley and I started in BA originally, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I kind of took a little break to pause and see what I really want and what I wanted to do. But I was very curious about Silicon Valley because for me, this MBA was not in the classroom. I already had a good school, a lot of experience under my belt. So I came there for Silicon Valley and I started
Gotcha.
to do my MBA on the ground by first going to tons of events, talking to different people, meeting a lot of entrepreneurs, talking to a lot of investors, trying to understand how ecosystem works because the Silicon Valley ecosystem is very complex one. People from outside sometimes very delusional about how it works. They think they'll take a ticket to San Francisco, they land there, they go through a couple of fundraising pitches, and they believe is a 10 million ticket from investors. That's not how it works at all.
How
Initially,
does it
I
work
just,
then?
and that's how initially, I was observing because I didn't know either. What I saw on one
Right.
hand, I saw a bunch of founders coming into Valley as a headless chicken with their ideas, lots of coming from Europe, from somewhere else outside of the US, from Asia, you name it, and thinking fundraising is just about distributing your pitch deck to everyone who has some sort of investor in their name on their business card. And this is the most stupid thing lots of founders are doing. They don't realize that they waste a lot of time because the effort is not always converts. It's not because you spin a lot of wheels, you will get a result. This is also, I think, the reason why many startups fail because their strategy is off in this sense. And as a startup, many think, all right, I have no resources. I'm going to do it all by myself. I don't want to pay someone. And I think it's a delusion I had personally in like with coaching. I was also like outside of that. Anytime I was thinking, why would I pay coach if I can learn it by myself on YouTube or somewhere else on the internet? And you
Hmm.
can learn. But how much time you would need to get at the level of
I agree.
someone who already spent 10 years learning that and can sell it to you in 2 weeks. I can teach you. But it has a price, right? Because person invested his or her personal time for 10 years in something what they learn and they're going to share it with you, but you have to pay. Lots of people don't understand that. So founders come, starts going to all events, sending their deck to everyone. And then it creates a lot of frustrated investors because investors say, what the fuck? I'm receiving pitch from a healthcare company and my thesis is in Web3, but people don't do the research. And for sure, it takes also time to research what's your thesis, what's the thing. And founder has so much on his or her plate that they don't have this time. So I realized there was a big gap between, on one hand, frustrated founders who don't know, and me spending almost 10 years with investors. I know how investors think. And then I saw some of the pitches and structure of these pitches. I was like, it's impossible for them to fundraise because they are off on what they need to talk about. And then at the same time, VCs complaining about, oh God, all these bad pitches, all these useless
Yeah.
things. So I said, well, this is somehow needs to be corrected. And this was my next venture, StartLink Venture, was born from that. I mostly working with early stage founders. Originally, and I'll explain, originally I started to work only with founders on the fundraising and being, as I said, like a coach, teaching them what I learned on the Wall Street and helping them with a deck, helping them with a pitch because deck is one thing, but many founders also pitch wrong. They start from getting into weeds. They don't
Yeah.
do like high level. Sometimes it's very hard to even understand what exactly they're building. And if it's hard to understand, then people lost their attention and then you lost the investor. So you
That's
need
it.
to
Yeah.
start with like high level, very simple explanation and then be ready digging into details if someone asks. But most of investors don't have the technical expertise, especially if you build something very technical in AI or
Mhm.
in deep tech. Investors don't understand that to that extent. They care about different things. So I started to work with the founders and speaking about what's the key learning. Key learning was that lots of founders waste a lot of because lots of founders don't want to pay me, right? They think basically I don't have money, help me out. And at the same time, I spend a lot of time building this relationship. It's a relationship capital, which I acquired. It's also my reputation every time I introduce someone to my contacts. So
Of
I
course.
don't want doing that, right? So I don't want doing that for free. It's a lot of time for me. And every time you start working on fundraising, you get to actually to do a lot of things, to do a lot of things for founders, which
For sure.
mostly outside of your scope because you have to understand their product very well to be able to introduce them. You also have to
You need to be fluent.
do
Fluent in the
do
company, simply.
marketing campaign with them. You need to understand their clients and help them with the client. It's a lot of work, a lot of time. I work 24/7 because I work with founders from across the globe. So I think the result could be achieved much better if the founders were more like realizing the value of working with advisors and mentors. And it also depends on, for sure, if you why people say it's good to be like to have a co-founder from Stanford or from somewhere else. It's not because they are smarter. They are smart, but it's because they probably have more contacts in the valley already and they understand how valley works. And then for sure, maybe in this case, you are in a less need of advisor or coach because you have someone internally. But if you have no one internally, then you have to find someone to work in this. And then what I learned else, sorry, Thibaut, go ahead.
Just before the next learning, I want to plant a little seed, and we can come back to it later. You said something earlier that was very interesting, and in a way, we also work with Peugeot Creator with early stage ventures, and it is something that anytime you talk with someone who works in the early stage, is that intrinsically, early stage doesn't have money. By definition. So thriving and evolving in the service category, if you want to call it, in an industry with little money, by definition, is very hard. So it's a bit of the golden question. Like, how do you solve the equation of making money in an industry where there's no money? And
Well,
I'd like
I
to
think
have your opinion on this.
I have very strong opinion, and it's also formed from my experience. I think it's wrong that the startups have no money because as a founder, before launching yourself into the founder's journey, you need to have some money aside because it's wrong. It's very wrong to go to someone and say, hey, give me money for everything I need to build. What about you?
Yeah.
Did you put your skin in the game yourself? Me as an investor, I want to see that you put skin. You want to have your bank account full, but ask me to take the full risk. No, you have to find the money. I don't know, either get your savings, especially if you are not a 20 years old baby starting the business, because I see people at 40, 50 starting a venture. If by that age you haven't put anything aside, that's a problem. And it's also, I think it's very wrong to ask everyone else to pay everything for you. You need to first, if you really believe in what you're building, and this is what also shows the difference between founder who will make it or not. For me, it's a test. If you really believe in yourself, put everything in there. Mortgage your house and put it if you really believe in that. If you sit there comfortably say, I only will invest money with someone else, then you're not serious about what you're doing. This is how me as an investor, I will see risk in there because we are not sharing risk. You ask me to basically take all risk, and that's not right.
So what if they just have no money? You're talking about when I founded my first company, I was 21 and the savings were very poor. My dad was backing me. And to be fair, after everything ended, I was still in the negative and I was still tapping in my little savings, but it was nowhere near enough to get us started off the ground. So we had to get someone else's money in there. But I had to
But
say
you
no to a
said
lot of
very good
people who
things,
wanted to help.
Thibaut. You already had your dad investing in you and you spend your savings. At least you put something in there, right? You didn't go straight to
I guess so.
investor and say, hey, give me every penny I need to spend. Yes, for sure. It's impossible to self-fund for many companies, especially if you build something very technical, very in like robotics.
Sure.
You will never have enough of savings, even if you have it. But what I, as an investor, want is that you are putting your skin in the game. One
Okay.
thing. And another thing, if you are not, then you have to be creative. Go find a partnership. Go find someone, or maybe just stop. Don't be entrepreneur. As I said, like everyone wants to be entrepreneur, but are you actually able? If you're not able to find the money, if you're not able to find a partners, if you're not able to do, that's not for you. Entrepreneurship is just not for you. Because you made it, Thibaut. It was not easy. I don't say it's going to be easy. And even if you get money from investors, it will not be enough because most of the time you get less when you need to spend. No one gives you more than you need. But at least.
What if the advice I want is how to get the money? Say, I'm asking you, how do I get the money? Because I don't have the money. Suppose I really don't have the money. Does it come to a point where you just have to say, we cannot work together because you cannot pay me? Is
If
it
you
is it
have
does it
no,
come to this
it's not only
simple
about
end?
paying me, because it's not only about paying me. You need to also money for marketing. You need also money to start a website. You would need money. If you don't have money at all, and if you're not able to borrow somewhere or get some sort of funding, then yes, you are not ready to start entrepreneur. Maybe go back, work somewhere, put money aside, and come back as an entrepreneur if you really want that. It's sad to say, but if you have nothing, because it's not about advisor fees, we are talking about a lot, because you would need money to travel. You would need investor will not come to you. You would have to go to see investors. Fundraising always takes longer than expected. You think you raise in 3 months, but in reality, you will
Sure.
raise in 9 months. So you need to have this buffer. What happens if in 3 months? And world is a cruel place. People will not. Yes, it's unfortunate, but like if you completely don't have anything, yes, for sure, you need to be also creative in finding something cheaper. Agree, like getting, if you have a friend who is a software engineer, ask them to help you with a website or something like this. I don't say don't get it, but if you have absolutely nothing and you want just an idea, then you will not go far. I haven't seen any good entrepreneur with zero personal investment succeeding anywhere. It could be from your family if you're very young. It could be your sister, brother, someone believed in you and gave you something. And it will always not be enough. Your money or first check will never be enough, but at least you have to have something, because there would be expenses. Creating a company, there would be expenses for lawyers to set up a company. You cannot set up a company by yourself. You have to pay fees for registering. It's not a crazy money, but if you have zero, you cannot start. That's unfortunate truth.
Is the unfortunate truth. Okay, I see. Yeah, it can come hard to hear for some entrepreneurs, especially if when you come out of university and you have a good idea, but you have nothing behind. And it's about creativity. I think this was the key word here: is even if you don't have it, show that you can
Go sell potatoes in the
manage
market.
something else. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Go do something. I don't know. Maybe you have a like watch collection your grandfather left you, sell it, and then put the money. Sold some jewelries to put in some of my investments or in my companies, and yeah, it hurted. But at the same time, that's life. This is how it works. If you need money, you have to put your own things. You have to. My point is, I'm not trying to be cruel. My point is, you need to have your skin in the game. Many people want
Right.
it very easy. They want someone else's skin in the game. This is your game, and your skin should be in there.
So before I put some of mine, you need to show that you put some of yours. It's a fair rule. I think it's a good conclusion to this segment.
It's like
Now,
every commitment. If you ask me to work and deliver, but you don't do anything, I'm not motivated, right? Like think about even boss and employee relationship. If my boss is
sure.
doing nothing and just asking me to work, I will be also not motivated.
You talked about earlier from the dating aspect is the exact same thing. There needs to be an exchange at every point.
Correct.
Very well. So speaking of money, now we've talked about skin in the game, and investors put skin in the game after doing the diligence, after the trust, after checking that the founder put skin in the game. Now let's talk about you as an investor. You mentioned having done a few angel investment deals, and I remember in our very first conversation we were talking about the evolution, your own evolution as an investor. I think you took the VC Lab course.
Correct.
You are looking to the more VC space, so something a bit more institutional. And we mentioned trust at the very first time when you were talking about the trust to raise more funding, so to create something bigger. And I was wondering, is Tanya today in July 2026 ready to start her own fund? Is that something you want to do? And if it's something you want to do, is it something you feel ready? And if not, what do you think is left for you to do to consider yourself ready to go there?
I want to do that, but I'm clearly not ready. And I'm clearly not ready for two reasons. Because I realized that it only makes sense to have a big fund from like economic standpoint. Because if you have tiny fund, you don't have much money to spend, because there are certain rules how funds are managed. Like you can only spend 2% of your fund on everything, including your own salary, your travel, your office, your back office. And back office and office and travel takes a lot of money. If your fund is 10 million, which sounds like a lot of money, in reality, you have $200,000 per year for everything, which for US is nothing. Believe me. Like you go to get an office space, you already at least need 50K. Then you travel here and there. And then you have to have a fund management, like back office. You cannot do it by yourself. You need to use someone's service and they will charge you. So you're out of money. So basically, for 10 million fund, you will not be able to pay any salary to yourself. Right now, I'm not in the capacity, and it's going to be staying like this for at least 5 years before you raise a next fund. And you need to show results
What about
in
AI?
performance on this fund. So
What about
I
AI? I mean,
realized,
I've had talks before, and they're saying that solo GPs raising 5 to 10 million are perfectly functional because you can have all the back office for a solo GP to be on your
you're
own. Is that
perfectly
something you
functional,
tried
but
and
have
just
you talked to these GPs? Thibaut, I worked with a lot of emerging managers and they all live off the savings and of passive income. If your situation allows you to be living off passive income for 5 to 10 years, go for it. I realized that that's not a path for me. I still want to raise a fund, but I don't think I have a credibility. And I don't think, and I also, as we talked, I need to show my skin in the game. I don't think I have enough of a credibility in fund building and fundraising for funds. That's why I started to work with funds recently, with emerging managers, helping them to fundraise, to see how hard it is. And it's much harder to fundraise for a fund than to fundraise for a startup, because you basically, as an LP, you go to other LP and say, hey, I know better than you are how to invest. That's what you're doing. And
right?
give me
Okay.
your money, I will be managing them. So you have to have a significant track record in the industry and notoriety. And I'm working on that. But right now, I'm not ready to raise a fund of the size I want. So yes, that's what I was telling you before. For a startup, it's the
Okay.
same. For fund, I am applying my own rules. I realize I'm not ready, so I'm working towards that. But if I go now, I think it's going to be a failure.
Sorry, do you have a target in mind roughly of the size
Yes,
of
at
fund
least
you'd like
30
to raise?
million, at least 30 million. And raising 30
Okay.
million as an emerging manager, it's a hell of work.
And you would, within this 30 million fund, you would consider then you would have other partners or associates, or would that be just on your own with some things that you outsource?
I think that's a good question as well. I would ideally have a partner, but then it's another thing, because partner is a hard choice, right? Because then you put yourself at the more risky situation, that your situation depends on external person, right? For sure, it's easier to raise a fund with a partner because you join your networks and knowledge and everything. But then you put yourself at the risk of, if this partner down the road decides that it's not for them and they don't want to continue, or if you disagree on how you want to run, you will spend a lot of energy. So it's not an easy question. I'm still trying to figure out. To be honest, I'm learning
Okay.
as we go and trying to understand what models work better. I don't think, as I said, in all bluntness, ready to raise 30 million by myself. And I haven't spotted any credible partner yet with whom I would be saying, like, yes, I would want to partner with this person. Or maybe there are people, but they don't want to partner with me. So it should come together. So I'm working on that. I'm
Again, it's
building my
match.
network and trying to understand this new part of ecosystem, because if VC startup relationship is one part of the ecosystem, GPLP is another part.
You say maybe credibility is the missing element, you would say here, the experience, the credibility. You've been thinking of having your own fund for a little while now. In this thought process, what is the chronology of things you need to tick, if you had a tick box of the end goal is creating a fund? We talked about credibility, we talked about having the relationship with GPs, and as a GP, the relationship with the LPs, etc. What are the other things that you need to do along your way to tick boxes to say, okay, today Tanya is ready?
Building wealth and being better in selecting startups, because I'm still on this journey. Because once you raise first fund, you need to show, or even on your, before that, you have to show what your angel investments are good one, that you invested
Right.
in the right. If people say, okay, Tanya, what you invested today? And I say 10 companies and 10 companies failed, then who will give me money, right? And to be
Right.
honest, this thought about raising my fund is relatively recent. I started to think about that only
Okay.
at the beginning of this year. It's not that I've been thinking about that a while ago. That's so I don't think I spend a lot of time. I'm worrying. I would give myself maybe year and a half timeline to decide
Okay.
if it's for me or if it's not for me. Because it's very complicated world. You may think like people just jump. They think like, oh, VCs have a lot of money or VC is easy. Me coming from investment banking, I was not expecting that venture capital will be so cash poor, because in investment banking, at least you deliver and you have a client pay. Here you deal with companies who don't pay, companies who go belly up, and they're the trend, which many people don't understand when they are not in this ecosystem. That's why I was saying Silicon Valley ecosystem is not what it seems. Many people think like, oh, you're VC, you have tons of money. Fuck no. I run very slim because, as I explained, first of all, I have limited resources. I have a lot of expenses. And that's why lots of people are solo GPs. There's very few hirings in the sector and very few hirings at a good salary because they just cannot afford the salary. If you're an investment banking analyst out of school, is at 20 years old, you already can make 100K. In here, to make 100K, it's very, very hard.
I see. So in a way, it has to be a passion thing, because I think it's one of
Exactly.
the questions that
I think people who are in the venture world, they are not there to make money. They are there because they really enjoy working with founders. They really enjoy being close to all these new ideas in that. But it's not people who make money. It's not a traditional banking. It's more area where you kind of I sometimes see venture as a nonprofit. You do good for the society, you good for the economy, because you need a venture for economy to grow, for these inventions, for all these to boost innovation. But it's not where, like, it's much more profitable to have a construction business. Believe me, Thibaut.
oh,
You
for
make
sure.
much more money
Even a
there.
pizza business, maybe.
Exactly. It's maybe stupid and less complex from outside, but it's much more cash rich than what VCs are doing.
So why do you do
So
it?
it's have to be. I think I really like these. It energizes me to work with people. That's what I realized. It energizes me to find myself in a complex situation and trying to find a solution and being at the forefront of this economic growth and innovation. It's interesting. Once you get there, it's hard to get out of there. But of course, I think you should have certain type of personality. Not everyone made for entrepreneurship, not everyone made for venture. And again, you would not know what you made for before you tried it. Because hearing from someone else, maybe you hear me talking now and you completely disagree, saying this woman is saying complete nonsense. I will go and VC and I made my money. Good luck. Maybe you are one of the exceptional outliers I've never seen, but you need
What do
to
you
try.
think? You said there are certain things you need to have a certain personality, and I was wondering. So, I think we can understand the types of personalities that are important to go into venture and into being a founder. Would you say there is a difference, a fundamental difference of personality that makes you either a better investor or a better founder? Like, what are like personality traits that are absolutely necessary to have to be a founder, but not necessarily to be an investor, and vice versa? Where is the difference here?
Well, I think you would be
If
surprised,
there
but for
is,
the venture,
maybe there's not.
world, what I think is very important, because you need to be less analytical, but you need to be very people person, and you need to be very good in analyzing characters. So very like maybe like even psychologist, like being able to spot the personality in front of you. Because we were talking earlier about someone sells something out of the air, and someone is doing it because they're badly intentional, and someone is doing because they're just delusional. You need to be able to read it very quickly, and not everyone
Right.
can. And then you also need to realize that your day to day will be a lot like, if you are not extrovert, it's very hard to do this job, because it's not like, you also need to choose a job based on your personality and being very honest. If
For
you
sure.
cannot handle 3 events per day and talking to 10 people daily and being on positive on the call, on the meetings, and being able to grab someone randomly in the street in a coffee shop and talk, it's not for you. It's very different skill set from, again, a banking. And I was surprised myself to discover that I didn't know what I was getting into. I think naturally my personality is more outgoing, and I don't like structure and sitting and following the orders. That's why at some point I was done with banking. But like, if you really like analytical work and follow the orders, go to the banking. You will be perfect there.
So
If you like people, then you're good. And if you're good in reading people and you're experimental, then go to venture.
those are common for venture founders and venture investors. Do you think that there's maybe a difference in terms of the personality you need to have as an investor versus as a founder? Maybe there's a difference there, or is it exactly
Yeah,
the set
No, it's
of
not.
personality.
There is some interlap because in both cases, you need to be very tenacious. If you have the capacity of receiving punches in the face and keep smiling, I think if you ask me which type of like sport will prepare you best, go on the boxing ring. If you enjoy being punched in the face and standing up
Yeah.
and smile, then ventures for you. If it's not, if you like Pilates, then probably it's not for you. I'm making a joke, but that's how it is. So I think these are the traits where you need to be tenacious. Then for founders, you need to be more like really resourceful as they talk. For investor, you need to be less resourceful, better in reading. For founder,
Okay.
you need to be better in going after things and being able to create something which doesn't exist. If I need someone, going and finding them and making me help. And we talked about not having money, but maybe finding some ways of getting funding in a different way than money, some grants,
I see. I
some,
see.
I don't know, selling piece of wood in the street, finding it, reselling. I'm just imagining, but like going finding a
It's to be crafty.
antique table laying on the floor. No one wants, take it, go to antique boutique, resell it and invest it in your business, find the money, right? Like for investor, it's slightly different. You need to be, and then you also need to be good in selling yourself. The people who are
Well,
so as emerging managers who doing it well is the one who is also, you need to be hustler. And the one who is also builds their personal brand and who goes and talks, and you need volumes as well that it's convert into things. And to create this volume, you need a lot of energy.
I think that's all the questions I had. I think we did a really good life path from the JP Morgan, which, as you said, is a lot more structured, bigger deals, bigger teams, bigger resources, bigger cash, and diving into the passion. And the check is not the same size, but the passion is there. It's made. It feels like it's really made for you, Tanya. When you talk about it, I can see the stars in the eyes, the passion of speaking with entrepreneurs, with founders, with investors as well, and connecting that for the greater good. I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I think we made a good journey of what leads to entrepreneurship, be it as a founder, be it as someone around the ecosystem with what you're doing with StartLink, or as an investor. All of them have some similarities, and it comes down to who you are and what you want and how much you're willing to put behind it. So thank you so much for providing these advice and sometimes some hard truths. So some of the things you said can generally be a bit hard for founders. Sometimes you realize, well, maybe I've been delusional the whole time, and it's time to
Yeah,
get
but
a
my,
kick.
my job is not sugarcoat here because I want people to understand
I agree with you.
how that not everything is easy and being honest with themselves. My probably last advice, not don't be afraid of experimenting. Try it. If it's not for you, it's fine. You will learn still something from that, but don't get stuck. If you really feel it's not yours and you tried it, be able to pull out. Don't say like, okay, I invested like 6 months of my life in that. Like now it should work. And this is the same with the founders coming back to like when you test an idea, you come to the market, you have an idea, but sometimes you face a hard reality that your idea no one wants apart from you. You were thinking everyone will be using that and no one wants it, right? So you have to persist. But at some point, you need to understand when to pull back. And it's not an easy, at hard, like where the moment is like, is it a dark hour before the dawn or it's going to be a dark hour before death? Right? Like sometimes it's hard to understand, but you need to also know and listen more to yourself. I think there is like any job, you will be only good if you're really passionate about that. If it's something everyone is doing and maybe it's a lot of money, but it's not for you, you will never be good at that and you will never make it good money. I think advice for anyone who did a lot of money in be it venture, be it any other sector, in my view, it's people who are passionate and really enjoying what they do. It's not the one who wakes up and says like, hey, okay, I need to do that. If today you find yourself in this situation that you hated, just walk away because life is too short. You may not know what else is made for you. Be ready, find your path, not always traditional path. Many people were thinking I was crazy to leave JP Morgan, and maybe I was, but it felt right at that moment for me. Yes, I lost a lot in terms of financials, I lost a lot in terms of stability, but it was fascinating journey. I would not trade for anything else. For me, it makes sense. From external side, many people still turn like that, saying this woman is very cuckoo. But in the end, see the failure as not the end. See the failure, you will not die. Even if you fail and you lose everything, you're still alive. So if you have this attitude, it's okay. Like the only thing you cannot reverse in life if someone is there. But if you even lost everything, you will restart. And the US is like, I think, is the best place for trying new things. And in US is more forgetful about people who just like fail. It's the country where you can fail and restart. The mentality here, yes, but I think it's because it's a country of experiment. If you think about US, which just celebrated 250 years of the country, it's a very young country, and it's made of people who were not happy with what they have back home and wanted something else. The problem of Europe, that's a different topic, but the problem of Europe, but we're so scared to try something, but no one stop us from trying and changing our mentality. We just ingrained in this and we see it and we chew and we stop ourselves from trying. What stops Europe from being next Silicon Valley? It's just here in your brain, like it's mental, right? It just takes, you can make anything you can imagine. In the end, someone created a light bulb no one imagined. Someone created a car, someone created airplane. And at the time it seemed crazy, right? Like, because before it doesn't exist. But so far you can imagine it. And if you have enough energy to go for it, you can create that. This is how inventions work. Yeah, I did not know what will come out of that. Thibaut, thank you so much. It's just like naturally leaded, your questions leaded to certain realization even for myself, because you were asking and I was thinking back about what I learned, and that's what came out. And probably it's not what people were expecting to hear because they were wanting traditional path, but I wanted to share my journey and to sometimes also explain people how it is from outside. I hope it was helpful for someone who will be listening to this podcast and they will maybe rethink. But again, I feel like every time I hear about something, before I tried it by myself, I never believed it. So go for it. Keep it on the back of the mind, what we said today, but go and try by yourself. And hosts as well, because hosts are really, really great and providing really great questions, which is food for thought. Well, to be honest, I consider myself generalist when it comes to fundraising because, as we mentioned before, it's like a coaching. You need to understand to speak investor language and be it investor in Web3, be it investor in healthcare or in the consumer brands, it's the same mindset. I don't consider myself as a deep topic expert. The things I invest personally is mostly climate tech, just because I like the space. Web3 because it's close to my heart, but it's also very, very risky sector. And recently I started to be interested in deep tech, but I would welcome any conversation. I actually recently relocated partially to New York and started to work with slightly different type of crowd because here there is a lot of consumer brands. I was working mostly with the AI and tech and deep tech in San Francisco, but here on the East Coast, there's more CPG brands and there are more fintechs. So I'm getting a new clientele. And for me, it's fascinating because it helps me to stay in the shape and be creative because for every client, there's like the different types of things you need. And I'm learning as I go and I'm experimenting. And so far, it's going very well. Thibaut, thank you so much for putting this podcast together and for inviting me. Thank you.